All right, there we go. So welcome to Google Classroom for Beginners. In the next hour, I thought we might go through the following potential paths that are on screen. They include accessing Google Classroom, creating a class and adding students, using Google Classroom pages, creating assignments, and providing feedback and grades. Is there anything that's not on the list that you were hoping that we would go through today? Sounds good. If you do think of something, just as I said, interrupt and ask away. So Google Classroom is really an easy to use tool to manage coursework. And with it, you can create different classes for the different subjects or groups that you teach. You can distribute assignments, and you can grade and send feedback. Students can complete assignments independently or in a group. Let's go through how to access Google Classroom. So if you're starting from google.ca, please make sure that you're signed in and you can see your avatar or your name up in the right-hand corner. You need to sign in with your spschools.org credentials in order to access Google Classroom and use it with your students who are within our subdomain of 5565.ca. To access Google Classroom, you can, up at the top, type classroom.google.com, and that'll take you right there. You can also, or alternatively, click the waffle or the Rubik's Cube at the top, and then click Classroom. So I've already used Classroom for a number of years, and so in my Google Classroom, I do have classes that are already set up that you'll see here. Not only have I used it with students, but I also use it with colleagues. For example, I work with the numeracy lead teachers and the technology lead teachers at each school, and we have an NLT class and a TLT class set up, which just allows us to kind of consolidate all our communication and sharing of agenda meetings and things like that. And so that's another way that you can use Classroom. Let's go through how to create a class. So when you're in here, your Google Classroom, if you haven't used Classroom before, it will be empty. It'll just be a blank white canvas. You're going to look for the plus at the top right corner. And when you hover over it, it says create or join a class. So when you click the plus, click join class. Oh, sorry, you're gonna click create a class. If you're a student or if you're directing your students, you'll have them to click join a class. So click create class. And the only thing you definitely need to put in here is a class name. And it's good to be descriptive about this. So if it is just a math class, make sure to have math in there, so math 5 or something like that. If it is a whole grade, then you can, maybe it's your last name and 5. So whatever, however students are familiar with, would be familiar with naming that class is a name that you'd want to choose. The section, subject, and room you can put in optionally, but I would suggest putting in a section. And what I've started to do, because I've used Classroom year over year, is I've started labeling the section with the date, or the year rather. So I'm gonna label this 2009-2020. I'm actually gonna change the name to science. We'll imagine that we're creating a science class. Now this way, I can archive this class at the end of this year, but I can also go back and reference all of my previous classes. And by having the year in the section, I'm able to, at a glance, see which year that class belonged to, because they do kind of get out of order, and if all of them are named the same thing, it's hard to tell which class I'll be able to find that information in.
Cam.
Oh, yes.
I did that class name, and then I got out of it, and then I wanted to come back and put some section information in, and I didn't know how to get back into it, so to speak.
No worries, I'll show you how to do that right now.
Thanks.
I'm gonna create here. And it's just taking a moment to create. There we go. So now I'm in my Science 5 class. So let's say I didn't put it in, or I want to change my section. I'm going to click the cog at the top right corner for my settings. Doing so brings me right back to those class details where I can put in a section, room, and subject. I can also put a description if that's important for my students, like this is where you'll find all our science things. If you're an elementary school teacher, If we were working in the classroom, it might make sense to have a different class for each subject. But because we're working remotely, I would definitely suggest having one class for your group of students where they can find all their science, math, language arts all in the same place. And that eliminates the confusion for students as to, okay, where do I go for this? Where do I go for this assignment and that, and so forth. If you're teaching in secondary grades, you probably would have a different class for each group of students that you teach, right? So if you teach a Science 8 and you also teach them a Social Studies 8, you might still want to have different classes for those groups because that's kind of how junior and senior high is organized. While we're here in these settings, why don't we go through some of the other options. The general setting here tells you where your class code is. And I'm going to talk about how students can join it, but basically one way for students to join it will be for them to enter a class code when they go into their classroom. So this class code can be changed or copied. You can copy it here and paste it into an email or another messaging app. You can also reset it to a different code in case you had maybe shared it too widely and other people who shouldn't be joining your class or joining your class, you can reset it. And you can also disable this code. The stream I'll talk about in a little bit, but you do have some options here in the stream for how much access students have to posting content. So in this case, students can post and comment on the stream, or you can change it where they can only comment on your posts or only you can post and comment. So depending on your comfort level with students engaging in that discussion on the stream, you have some different options there. You can also show classwork on the stream. And as I'm talking about this, I'm just realizing that these settings might not make much sense until we see what the stream is. So maybe I'll come back to these afterwards. I'm going to click the X to get out of my class settings. And we're going to talk about how students can join the class. We talked about that class code there, and here's another way you can access that class code. But the other way that students can join the class is if you click the People tab at the top, you have a list of teachers and students. And to add students manually, for example, I'm thinking about primary grades, K to 3, it might be a little too cumbersome to have students copy the code from an email and know where to put it. So I could just add them myself by typing in their email. So I could just get a list of their emails, copy and paste it into this section here, and then click invite. If with older students, and if they're more comfortable with other messaging apps, I would just send them the class code and instruct them to go into Classroom and join that way. I think almost all schools have been instructed to set up a Google Classroom and then have a co-teacher and their principal join that classroom. And this is where you would invite other teachers and your principal to join your classroom. Same thing, you would just click invite teachers and then add their emails to this list here and click invite. There we go. So we have this class set up, and I guess one final thing that you can do is I've named this Science 5, and Google's kind of magic AI has thought, well, this is a great picture for me to have at the top. If I wanted to choose a different theme, I could just click select theme. And this is really just aesthetic, but I could choose any of the pictures here, and there's different categories to choose from. Or there's also an upload photo. If I wanted to upload a photo of me, or if I have a picture of my class or something like that, I could upload that there. So next we're gonna talk about the stream, classwork, the people, and the grades pages in a little more detail. But maybe I'll pause here and see if there's any questions about creating or joining Classroom.
I have a question. If you change something on the screen, like you add something to share with your class, do parents get the email that you've changed it, or the kids get the email that you've added?
If you've changed like the picture here, is that what you mean?
No, just whenever you make changes or add something to this classroom?
Right. That's a good question. So when you post an assignment or post an announcement in Stream, students will get an email notifying them that an assignment or announcement has been posted. Guardians will not, and maybe we'll talk about that people page with Guardians here. I'm just going to navigate to one of my old classes from a few years ago, so you can kind of get a sense of what that people page looks like. So in this case here, I have my students from years ago, and I also have a column in the middle that's labeled Guardians, or it says email all Guardians here. And in this case, you can invite Guardians. With this link here, you can add an email address for a Guardian and email them. And what that allows them to have is an email summary. I think it goes out once a week, a summary just for their student, for their child rather, just for their child about what assignments happened this week, what's been handed in, what hasn't been handed in. So that's kind of what that summary is. By inviting Guardians, it does not give them access to the Google Classroom environment here. In order for parents or guardians to see that, they would have to log in with their child's login information. Does that clarify a bit about that, Diane?
Yeah, that's Lynn. And yeah, it's just from the kindergarten perspective, it's different, but I'll figure that out. Thanks.
Oh, okay, sorry.
I have a question about Guardians, Cam. So I'm working out of all of the other Google Classrooms. So I have a file, a folder set up in each classroom. If I want to email the Guardians to say the art assignments or the art challenges are coming out this week, I would select email all Guardians.
Yeah.
And that would automatically populate my address field in my Gmail.
That's right.
Do blind carbon copy like BCC, or will they all see each other's email addresses?
That's a good question. So I've just clicked the link here, email all Guardians for this class. And so it pops up in the BCC field. Yeah, okay. So that's a good question. Yeah, we definitely don't want to be sharing someone's email address with someone else without their permission. So that's a great question, Allison.
Thank you.
All right, so that's a little bit about the people page here. We talked about adding teachers, principal. We've talked about inviting Guardians and what they see. Let's go back to the Stream page and talk about this one. The Stream page is kind of like your Facebook feed. It's a reverse chronological sequence of anything that you decide to post in your class. Now, usually everything appears on the Stream. So if you add an assignment or material or a quiz or an announcement, all of those will populate in reverse chronological order. And you can scroll through pretty much endlessly, right, depending on how long the classroom has been active, through all of those. When students comment, if you have comments turned on, this is one place where they would comment. Just like it says for me to share something with my class, students would have the same ability if you've left that turned on. When you do type an announcement, you can decide for which class it's going to post. And so if you have multiple classes and you have the same announcement, you don't need to type it multiple times. You can just select all the classes you want it to go to. And then if you select multiple classes, you can't turn on and off students who get that. It will just be all students in those classes. However, I'm just going to unselect. If you were only posting an announcement to one class, you will be able to select all students or just some students. So you can differentiate the information that you're providing, and you can also use this whenever you're posting an assignment, which is really nice in Google Classroom. The posting on a Stream is not for an assignment or for a quiz or anything like that. It's just for an announcement. However, you can, as well as typing your message, you can also add attachments from your Google Drive, a link to another website, a file from your computer, or a YouTube video. You can either post it immediately, or if you click the down arrow beside post, you can schedule it to be posted at a later time, and you get to choose the date and the time that you post it. So this is really handy because oftentimes we're not, I can think about when I've used this in the classroom, I want it to post at the beginning of the period, but I'm busy teaching, right? And so this is nice to be able to schedule it the night before or even the week before, and then have it pop up in their feed when it's supposed to pop up. The other option here was save draft. So if you're starting to type something and then you need to come back and finish it later, you can do that. So that's our stream. I'm just going to go back into those settings because there were a couple of settings that talked about stream. For this one here, in the stream, as I said before, students, you can turn commenting or posting off for students if you're worried about that kind of freedom at the beginning, and maybe you turn it on at a later time. So you'll have to gauge how you want to use that. This one here about classwork on the stream is the fact that assignments will post there too, unless you don't want assignments to post there. Maybe you just want students to always know, click classwork to check their assignments. And in that case, you would click hide notifications. So you could use stream just as a kind of a conversational part of Classroom where you're having dialogue back and forth about questions in general, not about a specific assignment, and then just have all the assignments appear in the classwork page. If you do have classwork appear, you can either show a condensed notification or you can show all the details and attachments just like they would see in the classwork page. If you're curious, by the way, I just noticed it or was reminded about it here. If you're curious about those Guardian summaries and what they look like, just click See Example here and it'll take you to another page that shows you what a weekly email summary would look like. All right, let's go to the classwork page. So
Cam,
oh yeah.
I just wondered, and this might be something that you can or can't show us right now, but just based on what you were just discussing, would you be able to show us the difference of what a stream conversational looks like and what it would look like if you had one of those other settings?
Yeah, let's see if I can do that here actually. I'm just going to cancel this post here. So on my stream right now, you can see that I have assignments that are visible, but let's change the stream to just hide those notifications about classwork. Now in this case here, these are announcements that I posted that were not linked to specific assignments. So this one here, Voyager's film, was kind of I suppose I could have posted that as an announcement or as a part of an assignment, but I just posted it here instead. And then this was the O Canada that our district had created. But let me just go back because it didn't look like it changed very much here. Let's show condensed notifications. And here we go. So here is my assignment, and it has that kind of icon here that shows that it's an assignment. So that's here as well. Here's another assignment, end of year letter, so that's here as well. So that's the kind of subtle difference between the two. Does that help?
Yeah, so that's the condensed version. And if you chose the very top version, it would actually duplicate whatever you posted in your,
yeah.
It would show up twice, essentially, right?
Exactly. It would show any attachments that were part of that assignment. So in this case here, now I have the attachment that they had for this assignment, even how many were turned in or assigned, that sort of information. Here's those end of year letters with all the information here.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So in the classwork, this is where all of our assignments are going to be created. And this is what one looks like that has been used, where I've created different topics to help organize the information for my students. I have a social studies topic, language, art, science, and math, but I also had other topics like coding, videography that for a project we were engaging in, an entry task for things that we were doing at the beginning of a lesson, beginning of a day. So things like that. And then these ones up here are just not categorized. So these are just not in a topic. With topics, you can actually move them around just by clicking and dragging. So you can further organize and help organize that information for students. And however you organize it here is how it's going to be for all your students. Even within a section, there's a list of assignments for social studies. I can grab and drag and move that around to reorganize it. Typically, I believe assignments post in chronological order, if I remember correctly. And so the newest one would be on the bottom. That's not right. Maybe it's reverse chronological order. Sorry, it's been a while since I've posted in a student classroom. But you can manually reorganize those just by clicking and dragging. I'm going to go back to the example class that we had set up, and we'll talk about adding that different classwork. You're going to see a create button here, and you have assignments, quiz assignments, questions, material. Those are the 4 different kinds of categories of things that you can add. You also have a reuse post, which means that you could reuse a post that you had created before in this class. So let's start at the bottom and work our way up. So reuse post, I can actually go into any of my classes and reuse a post from any of them. So I see here my Science 5 that I just created. I also have an archived one that I created the other day, yesterday for our previous Hangout. But I have all these classes as well that I've used in previous years. So I can go into any of those classes, and then I can pick an assignment that I've used before and reuse it. So if I click reuse here, it doesn't automatically post. It does give me some options to edit it and make any changes before I use it again. So I'm going to come through these options in just a moment when we talk about assignments. But just so you know, it's not a blanket reuse. You can edit it before you reuse it. So let's go a little bit further up. So material. Material is something you'd want to post within a topic that it does not require students to hand anything back or hand anything in for. So for example, in math, I might post a material which is a link to a website that they can use to practice their basic facts. This is not something that they'd have to send back to me, but it's organized within my math section, and it's just something that they can readily find and use. So I can click material here, and let's post a link to, let's say, for example, extra math. And I'm going to post it as a link here. .ca, do you know? It is. There we go. So I have that here. I can add a description if I want, but it's just a link. And I can decide which classes I want that to post to. And if I have students set up, I can also decide which students get this link if I'm providing a resource that's differentiated depending on the student's level or ability. I can also create a topic right here. So in my brand new class that I just set up today, I don't have any topics, but let's create a topic for math. Now I can post this here. So now under my math topic, I have extra math here. Students would click it and then be able to follow the link to extra math. So that's a material. For a question is kind of like a poll or just something you want to use to get some more information. You can choose short answer or multiple choice, and then students would be able to respond. So you can ask a question, how are you doing today? Great. So not so great. And then again, you can decide who's getting that, which students are getting that. You can assign a point value if you decide to have this for marks, or you can leave it ungraded. And you can assign a due date for them to respond by and a topic. So let's create another topic. So social emotional. And there we go, and we'll click ask. And now this will post in students' classrooms. They'll be able to click it, and they'll be able to respond just by clicking. And when you click view the question here, this is for you as the teacher. You'll be able to see your students and how they answered. So these might be for questions that are just getting to know them, or getting to know how they're doing, or what have you, but it could be for curriculum or content related questions as well. Let's go back into create. And quiz assignment, I'm not going to go into detail with, except to say that quiz assignment and assignment are pretty much the same thing, except quiz assignment has a Google form attached, which is a blank quiz. So you could click this and edit it to be whatever questions you want to ask. If you've already created a quiz through forms before, you could just get rid of this one by clicking the X and then add your quiz that you've already created through Google Drive. And that could be added on there. Then students can access the quiz and respond to it. I will say that locked mode right here, you might as well leave this off, because locked mode only works on district managed Chromebooks. And most students will be working off of their own devices at home, with just some on a district managed Chromebook. So just might as well leave this off for our current situation now. Again, with quizzes, you can assign points and due dates and topics and things like that. But let's go back into the assignment section here. And most of what we post in classwork will be an assignment. So if I have a writing assignment that I want students to do, I could give some instructions here and add a Google Doc that they could use to respond to. I'm just going to put in an example doc that I have used recently. Here we go. Now, adding this in Classroom is really beneficial if you want students to be able to use a Google Doc and respond through it. You have three options. You can share a doc or a slide or any of the other Google tools, and you can have students only be able to view the file. Let's say, for example, if this is an example or a reference, an example or a reference for them to use in the assignment. If you want students to be able to collaborate on it, you can have them edit the file. So this doesn't create multiple copies. This is one file that all students, if you select all students would be able to edit at the same time. I've used Google Slides for this, where each student might have their own slide within one file. That way they can see each other's, but work on their own. The final way is for you to make a copy for each student. And making a copy for each student actually makes 25 different copies, depending on your class size, and each student will get their own. They can't see each other's, but when they submit that, you'll have a different copy or different file for each student. So those are the different ways to do that. I will say that if you're having students work in groups, having students edit a file and then just assigning that to the certain students in that group is a great way to manage that group work. So that's already set up where that group all has access to the same file. And then I would create another assignment or duplicate, reuse this post, and just change the students who have the access to the next post. There was a question that just came in. I'm just going to check it here. Yes, I believe it defaults to view, which is an important point to realize. So let's, this is a great question, Allison. So it does default to view. So I've done I've done it before where I've posted this assignment, I've clicked assign, and they have this assignment, and then suddenly my kids are going in and they say, oh, I can't access it, I can't do anything. And you can edit it. If you click the more button at the end of an assignment, you can edit. However, if you've shared a file that is view only, the only other option you have is students can edit file after that. So what I've had to do then is delete this assignment and then remake the assignment using that make a copy for each student. That's if I wanted them to each have their own copy. So Lori asked the question, when students respond or hand in assignments, do they come to you in an email? And yes, you'll get an email notification that an assignment has been submitted, but I'll show you how you can see in Classroom what's been submitted as well. And I'll be able to do that when we talk about the grades tab at the grades page within Classroom here, Lori. So I'm going to save that here. I won't talk too much about rubric. We don't really have time for rubric today, but I'd be happy to answer any questions. But rubric would be a neat way to add more than just a raw point score. I have had the question before about, can this be a has yet or meets or exceeds? And so you can change it to a 3-point scale, for example, where 1 is has yet, 2 is meets, and 3 is excellent achievement. And you might not use this for any averaging, but you would at least in your grade book have an idea of where a student is according to that 3-point scale. So I'm going to click Save here and update it. And let's see here. We've talked about the people page, and let's talk about that grades page now. So Lori, with the grades page, maybe I'll go into a class where I've had, and I'll be honest, I haven't used grades, Google Classroom for a grade book per se, because I've just put everything into PowerSchool before. But you can use Google Classroom as a grade book, and any assignments that you have at the top, or that you assign, will show up along the top. And then you'll be able to see at a glance who's handed it in, who hasn't. You'll notice that lots of these famous 5 assignments say not assigned. And that's because I did that thing where they were working in groups. So some of them got 1 assignment, others didn't get that assignment. So that's why I have all these famous 5s with not assigned here. So at a glance, you can kind of see student work and where they're at. If you've turned on class average, you can also have class average marks at the top here. And you can adjust some of those settings in the cog that we saw at the beginning. So we had class details in general, but there are grading settings as well. You can have an overall grade calculation. You can go by total points or weighted by category. And if you decide to add categories, for example, like homework or tests or quizzes, you can add those categories down here. And you can decide whether that overall grade is shown to students or not. Now for those assignments, you can click into these assignments to get right to them and have a look at which students have submitted them or not. You can also get to assignments right from the classwork page. And this is often how I've looked for those assignments. So I'm going to go down to science here. In grade 4 at the beginning of the year, we were doing light and shadows. And so we were doing this assignment where they would take pictures in the schoolyard and measure a shadow over at 3 different times during the day. So I'm going to open this assignment here by clicking on the title of the assignment. And I get this kind of work view where I can see a list of students who have turned it in. And I also have this grid view where I can see that they have 2 attachments that they've had here. What I really appreciate about Google Classroom is how easy it is to navigate through all of the documents or files that students are turning in. So if I go to Ryan's for an example here, I can click his name. I can see his attachments here, and I can just click the attachment to open it up. It looks similar to, in this case, a Google Sheet when it loads up here. It looks similar. However, notice that the top here is still part of Google Classroom, and the side here is still part of Google Classroom. But in the middle here, I have that, I can see clearly what work he's done on this Google Sheet. So anything in yellow is the information that he and his partner had to insert. And then they've also created a couple of charts to go along with the data, and those will populate here in just a moment. With students' work, I can access this sheet in kind of a way that would, like if you've shared this sheet. So this sheet is shared between me and the student. And so I can access this to add comments or help them out with any information or any direction here. I can type right into the sheet. I can also add a private comment, and this just shows up to the student in Google Classroom. So I can type a comment like, great work, or I'll probably be more specific than that, but I can add those comments right there. The other thing I want you to notice is that the other document that was attached with the assignment is right here as well. So a slideshow was added. I'm going to cancel this comment and click the Google Slides. So after they took those measurements, they had to summarize and present their data with their pictures in a Google slide. And in the same way, I see, it's just taking a moment here, but I see all the slides populating on the side. So I can navigate through and I can give some feedback right here. I can also grade it right here and again, add comments. Now, when a student turns in or submits an assignment, they can't access it to make changes. It's kind of like they are turned into a view-only viewer of their work. Now they can undo that manually on their end. If they go into Classroom and find the assignment, they can click a button that says unsubmit, and then that returns access to them. But as you mark, you can click return right here, and that also grants them edit privileges back on their work again. If you want to return a number of students' work all at the same time, you can click the drop-down arrow and click return multiple submissions, and then you can select all the students that you want to return all at once. Finally, the last thing I really love about this grading tool is that I can navigate among students just by clicking the arrows left and right here. So it'll navigate through my students. I don't need to open any other tabs or windows or anything like that, or jump back and forth between tabs. It's all right here. And then I can also click this menu here. I'm sorry, it's just taking a bit of time here. And then I see all of my students here. I can sort it by first name, last name, status, whether it was turned in or not. And so I can jump to any student that I want to just from that menu there. So we've taken a look at, I'm just going to jump back here. Yeah, we've taken a look at all of these pages, stream, classwork, people, and grades. And we've specifically gone into kind of those different kinds of assignments that you'd have, as well as how to give feedback and return information to a student. This is a good place for us to pause and see if there's any questions that have come up or wonderings before we finish up with our Google Meet here. So I'll leave that open to you. Do you have any questions at this point in time?
I have a pretty specific question, Cam.
Sure.
So again, because I'm going to be working out of everybody's folders, for example, let's say I had an art folder in your grade 5 classroom. When I post an assignment to my folder, does that automatically show up on your classroom feed? Or should I put my lesson links in my folder and then post on your classroom feed?
So when you post an assignment, you're wondering if it will show up on the stream? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. So let's say, should I post my assignments on your Google Classroom stream, or should I post my assignments within the folder that you've created for me within your classroom?
And by folder, you mean like the topic area, right? Like this kind of folder?
I think
Yeah.
that's what they did. They've added me as a co-teacher.
Perfect. Yeah.
Do I post in the specific file that they've created for me, or do I post on your basic classroom, where you're normally posting that create?
Good question. With assignments and anything that you see here, assignments, quizzes, questions and material, you can only post on the classwork page. So there's no option to post them on the stream page. And if they've set up, it sounds like what they've done is set up a topic here that would say art. And so you would just post it right into that. When you create the assignment, you would be sure to select the topic that they've created for you. Does that help, Allison?
It does, thank you.
No problem. That's a good clarification because yes, on stream, you'll notice that you can't share any assignments or anything. These would be more for just kind of general announcements or what have you. And sorry, in the chat window, Lori, I think you asked a question that I didn't answer. And I'm just wondering if you can clarify. You asked, is this for us to view only? Were you referring to when I was looking at students' work and attachments? To the grades. Yeah, the grades are for you to view only. And a student would only be able to view their own grade if you, a student will always be able to view their grade on an assignment, only theirs, no one else's. And a student would only be able to view their overall grade if you've turned that feature on. So on a student view for grades, they're only going to see their assignments, their grades. They won't see anyone else's. So that's a great clarification point there. Perfect. I think that's all that I had to present, unless you have any other questions. And as you're thinking, if you do have any other questions, I'll mention a few final points. One is, I think this, our situation that we're in right now, it's a great opportunity to embed digital citizenship right into what we're doing. If I was meeting with a class each day and using Google Classroom, one thing I would be talking about is kind of text messaging, because we do have on a stream, for example, if I enable students to post and add comments, which is helpful for getting information about what's confusing for students. There's also a chance for that to go in a different direction. It might be fairly benign in terms of students just posting silly emojis or something like that, or it might be something else really inappropriate. But having those conversations regularly in the first few weeks here, I think will be great for students. And connecting that not just to Google Classroom, but also to how they're going to be engaging with friends online via either Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or any of those other apps. So having those conversations regularly, I think will be a very positive opportunity for us. Students will be online a lot more now than they ever have before. And I think students already were online a lot before anyway. And so this is a great opportunity for us. Finally, just before I ask for final questions, I'm going to remind you that we do have other help desk sessions coming up. A repeat one for Classroom tomorrow if you have any overnight and you have some other questions, but also some other apps that we're encouraging teachers to make use of, such as Flipgrid, Loom, Hangouts, Meet. And then Friday afternoon is for anything that kind of arises throughout the week or any other topics. We intend to continue to refresh our offerings each week about what's offered, and also to extend this beyond educational technology to include things like literacy and numeracy as the weeks progress. So please continue to check back often. Finally, if you want to take a look at this recording or short how-to videos, I encourage you to check out our new district website. You may have seen it already, but one part of it that might be new to you if you haven't gone on this week, and it's a part that Catherine emailed about yesterday, is our intranet. So here's how to get to the intranet. On our new website for sbschools.org, you'll notice that there's a staff login link at the top of the screen. Clicking it, you'll be directed to sign in. You can either sign in using your PowerSchool ID, like first name, last name, and password, or if you're already signed in on your browser, just click Google, and that will sign you in automatically. Once you're signed in, look on the left-hand side at the bottom of the menu. Curricular Services is, the link for all of our intranet stuff. So click Curricular Services, and then you'll have options for educational technology, lessons, resources, templates, and samples. If you're looking for this recording, we're going to upload this recording and all our other help desk recordings in this section for educational technology. But if you just need a quick reminder about how to do something, we've also uploaded some tools at the bottom here. So because Google Classroom is about learning management, you would go into the Tools for Learning Management section, and there's a plethora of quick videos. Most of them are about a minute or less. And so if you just need a quick refresher, instead of going through this recording and trying to find the answer, just click one of the links and get a quick answer. The how-to videos are also in here for all of our other tools. So if you're doing one-to-many, like a Loom video, there's some how-to there and a Hangouts Meet. If you're doing group discussions, that's going to include Hangouts Meet and Jamboard. And if you're doing some collaboration with students, we have Flipgrid how-tos and how-tos for all of those G Suite apps like Docs and Drawings and Forms, Sheets, Sites, and Slides. So feel free to use any of that information. And finally, if you have another question and you just don't have the time to go and search for it, please just send me an email. I'm usually able to get back to you within the day. So even if it's between Hangout meets or help desk meets, just fire me off an email and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. I see a couple other questions that have come up. Lori, you asked me if I can quickly describe Loom, and I can. Loom is an easy-to-use app for recording a video. So some teachers are recording a video on their iPads or something else, and then sharing it to Drive, and then sharing that link to students. And you can definitely do that, but Loom makes things a lot easier. You can install an extension right here in Chrome, and you can quickly take a video and share a link with students. And you have a few other editing capabilities as well, such as pausing the video and restarting it, or even trimming a little bit of the video and things like that. And so if you're not familiar with Loom, I do encourage you to either reach out to me after this call or join one of our help desk meetings about Loom. And Lynn just asked, people using Zoom, not approved in the district. And so just regarding Zoom, we are encouraging teachers to, as much as possible, stay within the Google suite of apps that we have. Part of that is security and privacy because we have Google Apps for Education, and we know how our information is managed and used within that. And since we have Hangouts Meet, that kind of fits the need for those chats. I know that Zoom offers some other things as well, but because of the privacy and because of the security, we're really encouraging teachers to use those Google apps. And then the only other thing I'll mention about Zoom versus Loom is, Zoom versus Meet, is that with Meet, it's literally like 3 clicks and you're in a Meet, even with students or anyone. With Zoom, there's a number of different ways that you can control and set up a Zoom. And so that's really great if you're familiar with it. And if you're not very familiar with it, it can seem kind of overwhelming about, what do I turn on, what do I turn off, and things like that. So I hope that helps. The last thing I want to leave you with is that just remember that this is a great time for us to be curious about this brave new world that we're in, and feel free to experiment as we try things out with students. We ask them to give it a try and learn through mistakes, and I think we need to do that as well as we as we head down this path. And don't be afraid to take your time and not feel that rush that the curriculum typically instills in us to rush through things. Now we kind of have that gift of time to slow things down, and we don't need to get through it all by the end of June, right? We're expected to move slowly. So take that time, please, and take care of yourself. I'm here if you have any other questions. Otherwise, thanks so much for joining me, and have a great afternoon. Thanks so much, Tanya. Thanks, Lori. Thanks, Ellen. Thank you, Lynn, too. Thanks, Diane.
I have a specific question for you, Cam.
Yeah, for sure.
But if there's other kind of more general questions, I can connect with you a little bit later.
I think this would be okay. It's only, let's just see here. Yeah, it looks like it's just you and I think Diane will probably be here if that's okay that she's listening, or I'm not sure, she might be doing something else.
Diane, can I show you my screen so that I can explain to you? I think it'll be easier to get my point across.
Absolutely, that will be easier. I'm just gonna stop presenting here. And there you go. You should be able to present now.
So, screen.
Oh, and Allison, sorry, I'm just going to turn off the recording here.
Thank you.